morning. This is Dr. Ginny Baro, your GCA host on GCA Studios, brought to you by Game Change Agency. I'm also the CEO and founder of Fearless Women at Work. And today I am honored to be with Bob Selle. Hi, Bob.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Awesome.
Bob, I just want to share with you quickly how Bob and I met. And I know that I talk about networking all the time, and people always think that I'm just blowing smoke. If this is true, Bob and I met networking. So it is so important that when you feel pulled toward people that share a passion with you, in this case, Bob and I share the passion of leadership and the importance of having great leaders in the organization who drive change, who evoke and inspire greatness in employees. That's what brought us together. So today I am honored to have a courageous conversation with Bob on 3 key topics that have to do with an evolved leader for today and tomorrow. So specifically, Bob and I are going to be talking about why leading today has changed and how it has evolved from managing. We're going to talk about why it's important to realize who works for us. And finally, we'll touch upon how to work on our emotional intelligence. All 3 really timely topics. And I'm really excited about that, Bob.
I'm excited. Can't wait.
Before we get started, though, I want to just share with you who Bob is and what he's been up to these days. So Bob designs and manages human capital strategy and processes for high growth companies. He has led culture change and organizational design for some of America's most recognized retailers over the past 20 years, including working as an executive at Kmart and Kohl's. Bob is currently the Chief Human Resource Officer for the Northeast premier closeout retailer, Ocean State Job Lot. Under his leadership, they earned the Forbes Best Midsize Employer and the Rhode Island Healthiest Employer Awards 2 years in a row. Congratulations, Bob. That's quite a feat.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Now, as a believer in collaboration and giving back, he's a presenter and collaborator for CHRO Online, the Corporate Executive Board HR Leadership Council, and the Northeast Human Resource Conference. Bob also takes the time to advise peers on leveraging a focus on people and their well-being to drive employee engagement, happiness, and business results. He's a consultant and advisor for several startups and an active volunteer at the Rhode Island Free Clinic and a mentor at the Institute for the Study of Nonviolence. And Bob is a passionate speaker and a writer on change management, culture change, and organizational effectiveness. We share that passion, Bob. He has also published articles on Thrive Global and has his own blog at Bob Selle, HRguide.com. And you'll get to learn how to contact him later. But we want to get started, Bob, and really just dive in. But before we do, I just want to throw this one last thing about you that I found to be fascinating, because as if you weren't busy enough, Bob is a true Midwesterner turned beach lover, and he lives in Rhode Island with his wife and 4 children. What a blessing.
Yes, what a blessing. I agree.
So, Bob, let's dive right in. And I would also love to start with my favorite question. Bob, what is your why?
Ooh, you go right at it.
Why beat around the bush, right?
Yeah, it's a good question, and one that we should ask all leaders. And I think for me, my why is, you kind of talked about it in the introduction. I believe I'm a guy that's filled with faith, and so I believe that my why is service, and I believe that I was put on the earth to impact anyone that I encounter, and so that's what I try to do every day, to the best of my ability, is to make the world a better place.
That sounds lovely. And I know some people may say, all right, everybody's trying to do that. Well, the actual truth is that not everybody's trying to do that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate how you bring service and contribution to the forefront. And I'm sure that drives all of your behaviors and actions every single day.
Absolutely.
Not only at work, because that's the thing, right? A lot of people are great family people, and then when they go to the office, they turn into this other human. And you go, what happened? You're so caring and nurturing at home.
Yeah.
Where did you leave that when you decided to drive to the office?
Well, that's a great segue on some of the stuff we're going to talk about, because
Absolutely.
It's the whole person that lives and works and is at home. So that's good stuff.
Wonderful. Well, let's dive right in. So the first topic, why leading today has changed and how it has evolved from managing. Tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah, so my perspective on this is pretty simple. You go back 20, 30 years, a company, we were given assignments with the folks that we worked with. We pretty much just executed. Some would say that there's elements of leadership there, but I think history would say that we really just manage the business. The leader today, or the manager, even the manager today, is constantly dealing with data points coming from all over the place. We live in a high-touch society now where information is available at all times. And so when I think of what a leader today is, I think that they are special people because they have to balance all of that information and still have to focus on the work at hand and the people that work with them, because the work actually gets done, not from us.
That's right.
It gets done through our people. So that's what I mean by that.
So when you say that we're evolving from just managing, what I hear in that is that we as leaders are really responsible for so much more, right? Mm-hmm. So the work is only one aspect of that, right? And the other pieces that you, especially as an executive in the human resource space, knows that is so much about. I know engagement is a huge issue, right? Every leader's faced with low engagement. I think Gallup polls, one of the last Gallup polls indicated that 70% of the workforce is not engaged. That's outstanding. That's a huge number, right? And it keeps changing every year when they do their reports. So how does doing this, being very conscientious about what a leader is today, dovetail into increasing and improving engagement?
Well, a leader today needs to think about who's working for them and understand what motivates a person today. Again, I'll go back, we were measured on productivity differently back then. It was widgets and you just pumped them out. Mm-hmm. Today, people struggle with what is our goal as an organization. So I found that the best companies and the best leaders understand that, and understand that if you connect with your people, understand who they are and what motivates them, and you focus your style, situational leadership, on each person on your team and find those synergies, you're going to drive not only great performance, but you're going to drive engagement. And the best companies do that.
So, Bob, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges leaders have today?
Time with all of the demands and all of the information to really focus on their people and the work at hand. Everyone, I mean, you see all of the stats that I see too, is if anyone could ask, what is the one thing you want? Most people say more time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the best leaders cut through that and try to simplify what needs to be done, and is very good at prioritizing for their people.
So that was going to be my next question, right? Like, okay, so we have this challenge, which is time. And we all say we just don't have enough time. And as a matter of fact, I just shot a quick video that I do daily videos, and I talked about that. Like, how do we get away too from using that excuse, though, right? Because I just don't have enough time to develop my people. I don't have enough time to have conversations and give them constructive feedback. I don't have enough time to even breathe, right? So you mentioned one strategy, which is prioritizing, right? at the beginning of each day, there are key things that we know we have to get done. And I think seasoned leaders know this well, and they've had to manage this. But I think what happens a lot, Bob, and correct me if I'm wrong, at least from my experience, 20 years as a leader, is that sometimes as a leader, you tend to prioritize things that impact you directly. So for example, if I have to put something together for my manager, right? In this case, the chief information officer, or for the executive team, something that I'm presenting, that tends to always take priority over anything else. However, that doesn't mean that we don't have a staff that we're still managing.
That's right.
That they have projects to work on. And so sometimes, unless we are very cognizant, we may get so consumed by our task that we may forget that we have a team that is looking at us to guide them or to give them whatever advice they need at the time, or coaching that they need.
Yeah. I can speak to what we do as a team. We talked about some of the awards earlier. Part of that was a learning that I had, which is I tried to eat the whole elephant at once. And as my team and I just discussed, and we discuss it now almost on a weekly basis, is what's most important. So we're constantly changing goals on the fly based off of the business climate and what's going on with not only the work, but with our people. So to your point, it's making sure that the whole team stays focused and stays informed and high touch to make sure that they understand here's what's important now, so nobody's getting overwhelmed looking at that checklist. A checklist today is changing by the hour, so I spend a lot of time talking about the why of what we're doing and what's important to us. So there's definitely tools you can do.
I love that strategy, which is asking the question of your team and sharing what's most important. Most important. Because you're right, that is so dynamic and it's constantly changing.
Yeah.
And that gives you also, I think, the ability to pivot. So at the beginning of the week, what was most important by the end of the week may not be what's at the top of the list.
That's right.
So I love also the piece that's in there, inherent in that, is communication, right? How we need to really communicate with our teams and stay in high, as you call it, high touch.
Yeah, high touch.
I like that.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anything else that we want to share about why leading today has changed and how it has evolved from managing before we move on?
No, I think we've touched on it.
Okay, excellent. So the takeaway is that, what would be the takeaway that you want to leave people with about that topic?
Yeah, the takeaway is to focus on the whole person and making sure that you understand that as the leader, you've got to cut through the noise and make sure that what your team and you are focused on are the right things. That's what my takeaway would be.
The right things.
Yeah.
And the right things change all the time. Excellent. All right, let's move on to the second topic at hand, which is why it is important to realize who works for us. So you had mentioned during our pre-conversation about how it's no longer taboo to understand the whole person working for you.
Yeah.
Tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah, well, I think something that's helped us, I think, is just the evolution of social media and how everybody plays their life out on social media anyway. So you kind of know who's with you all the time anyway.
Yeah.
But I think it goes back to just the world is evolving, and it's okay, and it's actually a strategy to make sure that we're well aware of, one, what makes people tick, so you can get your work done. And the reason being is, again, you just go to the research in the data. Most people today would say that they're stressed by a couple things. They're stressed financially, and they have family stress, because there's a lot of leaders and a lot of people today stuck in the sandwich generation. And there's so many pressures outside of work that if we don't take the time to understand who works for us, one, we're never going to be able to retain anyone so the work can get done. And two, we all become robots, and that's not what we were designed to be. We were designed to be connected.
Right. Yeah. Now, that may be very simple to do for somebody who somebody who connects well, right?
Yeah.
Somebody who that comes naturally to.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, when you first come in on the week on a Monday from the weekend, how was your weekend? And just asking questions that are not prying questions, but more so curious questions about the person. So for somebody who doesn't have that skill set, Bob, how would you suggest that they connect and that they get to know the whole person?
Yeah. So, and this I've had to do many times as an HR leader, right? You work with so many leaders that are driven to get results, and so. And you also touched on engagement and surveys, and there's just so many data points. So the coaching I've always given leaders that it may not be their strength is simply you don't underestimate even sharing a little bit in the impact that happens with that. And so, Ginny, you touched on a point. How was your weekend? You know, I would say all you'd have to do is answer it pretty simple without sharing a whole lot. It was a very busy weekend. You know, I had to get to the market. I had to do 4 different things. My son or daughter had a game. And just that alone, your team says, wow, they're opening up to me. And then I would say to them, so you just said that to me. What did you actually share with me that is really deep? And they're like, well, nothing. And I'm like, yes. So there are absolutely strategies that you can, you know, implement that can get to a pretty good place with your people.
And, you know, I so like that approach, right? And it's such a, you know, breath of fresh air to hear you say that, because I have found that I was the most committed and engaged at work when my manager and I would have those kinds of conversations, because you felt that you were working for a human being.
Yeah, yeah.
Rather than always having to feel like you have to bring in your, you know, professional persona, and it's almost like you're like a little robot.
Yep.
So I do love the connection part. And I think that also it allows you, it gives you a frame of reference, right? From which to view your employees. And to your point before, there are also things that come out when you're sharing that information about them that you may not know professionally. So I'll give you an example. Some of my employees were very artistic, and you would never know that they were writers or that they had a blog, and you never knew that they were really prolific writers, for example. And so now that I knew that little piece, you know, of information, if there's a chance where I need something to be written, I would be like, hey, you know, you want to give this a shot? And that is another way to really get to know the strengths that your staff has above and beyond what they were hired to do.
That's amazing. Yeah, you know, another tool I've used when coaching folks that struggle with this is just to simply ask them some questions. And this is what I use when I have leaders tell me that it's this whole generation thing and I don't know how to connect. And so the questions I simply ask is, so let's just take you as a person. What's important to you? And they typically say, well, I want to feel like I'm part of a team, and I want to be recognized, and I want to feel that my contributions count. And I'll say, okay, I believe that crosses just about every generation, because that's just what human beings need.
That's a human need, yes.
Yeah, and just simplifying things for people really helps them connect the dots, because I think sometimes people overthink this stuff.
I agree. It's that golden rule, right?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
That's it. It's that simple. I know that it's not rocket science, but it does work.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so what is the takeaway for why it is important to realize who works for us and knowing the whole person?
Well, I think the takeaway is simple. If you do those things, just a few of those things, your engagement is going to increase. Your team is going to be highly committed to you and the efforts, and the results are going to follow. And all of us are here, you know, at work to deliver results.
I know, and sometimes I think there is maybe a misunderstanding or a misconception about driving for results and connecting. We think they're mutually exclusive, and it's actually the opposite.
Yeah, I agree. Yes.
They are 100% correlated. And when we're able to connect, people bring their best to the table. They feel heard, they feel valued, they feel engaged, they feel their opinions matter.
Yeah, I agree.
So thank you for that. And so the last topic, and it is how to work on our emotional intelligence. And you talk about empathy being one of the keys.
Yeah. So I think, the beautiful thing about this last topic is we've touched on it in the first two as well, which is the focus on understanding our people. And I always start with empathy and trying to just understand where that person is. And if we can just practice that, and there's so many tools out there that can help you, but for me, it's listening and observing before I really engage in a lot of conversations. I've always been one that kind of observes and tries to take in what's going on in the team dynamics before I engage. And then you get a sense of what's going on with the team and with the individual people if you do those things. Yeah.
Empathy, listening.
Yeah.
Right. Understanding. That saying, try to be understand before you are understood.
Yeah, absolutely.
Napoleon Hill, I believe it was who said that. So for many of us, especially leaders, we may also have the misconception that we're supposed to lead. Right? We're always supposed to have the answers. However, you and I know that as a leader, we're also coaches. Yeah. And as coaches, we are trying to help people come up with their own answers. So one of the tools that I teach my clients and that I talk about is asking empowering questions, right?
That's great.
Asking how and what questions. How is it going? What's difficult about this? What is the struggle? So that then you can provide the help in a way that really moves the needle for the person that you're speaking with.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. The other thing, to touch on that, I also, ask the question, what's the difference between a leader and a coach? And I think there's so many books on leadership. There's servant leadership. There's lead from the front. What I tell people is, read them all and study them all and try to define what you are. I guess I'm a leader, but I'm more of I focus more on the team. And as long as we focus on the team, those people are going to follow. And right. And you're constantly coaching, right? You're picking them up when they're down, and you're cheering them on when they're driving forward. And as long as you're fully engaged with your team, you're going to win.
And one of the things that is required for you to do that is presence.
Yes.
Right? You have to be in the moment.
Yes.
You have to be fully there. And how do we do that if your head's going in 50 different directions, thinking about what you have to deliver, what's due, what projects you're doing, what meetings you're having? It's very hard to be present with a person when they're in front of you. So that requires that mindfulness.
That's where I was going to go. That's, as I've evolved as a leader, I think mindfulness has become probably the number one tool that I've been using, and that I've been trying to share with everyone I come in contact with, is taking the time to be present, whether you're at work or home, and focus on what we're focusing on now so you can't get distracted.
That's right. So some people say, how do we do that? How do we become more present in the moment? And one of the things that I also talk about and teach is focus on your breath. That breath will bring you to that moment, because there's nothing else but your breath in that moment. And when you even focus on feeling your breath, everything else that you're thinking about out here comes to here.
Yeah, and that you're absolutely right. I'll give an example, and you also have to be comfortable with that, right? Because some of these newer thinkings, which have been around in Eastern medicine for a long time, but newer thinkings from leadership, depending on, I'll go to generations. Some of the older leaders say, "Well, that's weird," right? So you have to let them know that it's okay and it's safe and you can trust them. I was speaking to a board a couple weeks ago, and I could sense that the board was distracted before I began the conversation. So I started with mindfulness with the whole group. I asked them all to just put their phones away and to close their eyes and to focus on their breathing for 1 minute.
That's great.
And in that 1 minute, when they came back, I could see that they were ready to be there.
They were present.
Yeah, and we have to do that as leaders. We have to be bold and we have to be courageous.
We do.
Yeah.
That takes courage.
It does.
It takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
And so part of being courageous, I think, is putting aside some of our own limitations around what people will think about us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially if you know that it works. It's a matter of, if I'm trying to get results here, right? We're results driven, but we're also connected result driven leaders.
Yeah.
It's putting aside the ego or what would people think and taking a calculated risk.
Yeah.
Because if at the end the benefit is it's a good one, it's a benefit for everyone, then what's the downside, right?
Yeah, when people are uncomfortable, I'll ask them a simple question. We're not solving world problems here, right? Remember, at the end of the day, this is just work. It's important,
right.
But it's just work, and nothing bad is going to come from this, I promise.
That's right. Oh my gosh, I love it. Wait, but believe it or not, we've just spent 25 minutes talking.
We did?
We did. Time flies.
Let's go another 25.
Isn't that great? Oh my gosh. It's incredible how fast it goes, Bob. So I want to thank you for your generosity, for your time, for your knowledge and your insights.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to continuing to develop and do other projects together. That will be wonderful.
Me too. Me too.
And I also want to just let people know how they can reach you. How can they find you, Bob?
Yeah, well, you can find me on LinkedIn, Bob Selle. At Twitter, it's at @RDSelle. And then the best way is bobselle.thehrguy.com, which is my blog, and there's a way to connect with me.
And Selle is SELLE.
That's correct.
So we'll write that down on the video so people can see it underneath your picture.
Perfect.
All right. And I am your host, Dr. Ginny Baro. Check out my #1 best-selling book, Fearless Women at Work. And it's now available on Barnes & Noble, of course, on Amazon, and all the local bookstores. So you can reach me at fearlesswomenatwork.com. Thank you again, Bob. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, Ginny. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.